And welcome to the Industry 4 Community Podcast, sponsored by 4.0 Solutions and the ProveIt Conference. I'm your host with the most, Walker D. Reynolds. I got my partner in crime, Zachary Scriven, coming in from, are you in San Francisco? Where are you?
I'm in San Francisco right now.
In San Francisco. All right.
The Bay Area.
All right. We decided to, jump on live. I talked a couple hours ago and I said, hey, man, we're all taking a break after the ProveIt conference. Like, hey, we've done our debrief. We got our lessons learned. I've talked to a bunch of vendors, had a call with Adam Kennedy from Litmus earlier today. I've had a bunch of calls. I want to talk about a couple of things, but we decided to jump on here and kind of do a debrief on the show. Let's talk about next year. Let's talk about the status of the industry, kind of where we think things are going. What do I think the implications are? ProveIt will have on the industry, and then we'll basically put that to bed. In a couple of weeks, we'll come back and announce next year's show. We got some announcements. I wanted to bounce some ideas off the community today and get some feedback on some of the ideas for next year. We're just brainstorming right now. We have a long list of lessons learned, but with that, I want to start with Zachary, my brother from another mother. How you doing, buddy?
We're back.
We're back. Hey, so what are your thoughts? I mean, obviously, there's videos everywhere giving reaction. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about the nuts and bolts, a lot of the stuff that other people haven't really talked about. Amy Williams did a recap video today. I didn't get a chance to see yet, so I don't know what she covered. I will watch it tonight, like when I lay down. But I've seen most of the other. I've read like Jonathan Wise's article. I've read a lot of posts. The teams have been forwarding me feedback. But we're going to cover a bunch of stuff here that some stuff that other people have covered. But mostly we're going to talk. I'm going to tell you I'm going to give you my thoughts on the vendors, on how they did. We'll talk about, we'll break it down and with some qualifiers. Like, I want to go back and watch all the videos of all the vendors again before we do a final scoring. But I'm going to go ahead and give the initial scoring based on, what I saw with my own eyes and you walking around. But with that, I want to get Zach's feedback. So Zach, you surprised me with a little rap. Those of you who were at the show, Zach did like a rap performance on, that Industry 4 song that he created. Hey, Vlad, how's it going, brother? I actually have yours and Dave's feedback from today's podcast we're going to bring up today, but we're going to talk about those guys here in a couple of minutes. But Zach, what is your initial feedback from the show?
It's been really good. My initial feedback is the show has been amazing. Better than I could have ever imagined.
Hey, let's put Vlad's, when are the videos getting released? Any ETA? Put Vlad's question up there, please. When are videos getting released? Any ETA? All right. So what we're currently doing, Vlad, is, so for those of you who weren't at the show, we had 3 camera crews. I think we had 3. Yeah, we had 3. So we had we had 2 A crews that were responsible for capturing all the footage. Okay. And then so we had 2 A crews that were getting all the primary footage from all the vendors, from the ballroom, from all that stuff. Then we had a B crew that was doing like drone shots. So all those drone shots, that was actually Albert. Shout out to Albert, who came in he was in Southeast Asia and made the trip so that he could do all the drone. He was a drone pilot. We had to have an actual drone pilot do those shots because it's in DFW. So not anybody can just come up in there. You know what I mean? And then we had the production crew inside the ballroom filming every presentation. So there's a lot of footage. We have all of it together. So to answer your question, our goal is to start releasing. We're not going to release every presentation publicly. We're gonna pick. I'm gonna say about half of them will get released publicly, and they'll be the best ones. They'll be the ones. They'll be the ones that we think the vendors who got scored. They basically got greens. We actually went through And as a team, I'm going to talk about it today. I'm going to go through all the vendors. We scored there. Either you hit a home run, you had a wow moment, you did a good to great presentation, or you were average or you underperformed. That's red. So green.
So which vendor did the best overall, and then like which bronze vendor were you most impressed with?
All right. So yeah, let me.
Well, bronze is easy, right?
Yeah, the Aviva was definitely Aviva and Mock Controls were the two who were the most surprising.
Yeah,
I mean,
Mock Controls as well.
Yeah, Mock Controls fucking blew people away. Hey, here's another one.
Eucadine as well.
Yeah, Eucadine had the speaking chatbot, which was cool as shit. And if you haven't seen it, you want to see. Rafi is the one who he actually did a video on. Rafi Shahidi did a video in both in Urdu and in English on LinkedIn if you want to see them. But let me answer your question. Who was the most surprising bronze? I'm going to give it. I have to put it into three. First off, there were a lot of great presentations, and I shot this reaction video, and I just went off the cuff. Hey, here are my initial reactions. I want to point something out. When we're talking about one of the best presentations, I left Flow out. Flow should have been in that group in terms of the 5 best presentations. And here's why. If you're an advanced developer, Dylan Dufresne pointed this out, and I want to thank Dylan for pointing this out. I drew a blank on Flow's presentation. Which presentation you thought was the most impressive was going to be a function of your digital fluency. So if you were highly advanced, you've been doing this for a long time, you have full stack fluency, and you have taken digital transformation initiatives to the scale phase, okay, to the scale phase, then you are going to find Google Cloud. You're impressive. That would have been a wow moment for you. Litmus would have been impressive. That would have been a wow moment for you. Dell Native Edge could have been a wow if you're having trouble. If you have like say 50 to 100 plants and you want to see how you deploy, that could have been a wow. I think their presentation landed soft, but the content was really good. Same thing with Google. It landed soft, but the content was really good. If you were really advanced, you would have been impressed there. But if you're really advanced, the two that you would have been most impressed with are either Litmus or Flow. Okay, because they and I left Flow out, and that was a mistake. They did a phenomenal job. This is the problem with me mentioning names. If I'm not going to mention every name, I don't write it down. I could skip over somebody. So who was the most surprising in bronze? Okay, I'm going to answer. What was it about these guys, David Pavone? So Aviva or Mock Controls or Tatsoft. Okay, I'm going to give those 3 as the bronzes that were the most surprising. So bronze didn't go on stage. Bronze they were in the expo hall in the Fort Worth ballroom, and then their ProveIt session was filmed. Okay. All of the vendors are going to get their filmed presentations. All of the vendors are going to get the film presentations, and all of the vendors are going to get all of the other vendors' presentations. They're going to get all the recordings. Every vendor is going to get all the presentations. Okay. We are going to publicly release the ones that we've categorized green. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to list off the ones that are listed green right now. Green means they had a wow moment, amazing presentation. The consensus would be they did a wow. They followed the rules, they answered the 4 questions, and they wowed you.
So who was the top number 1 on stage wow moment for you?
Again, for me, the wow moment comes down to it's going to be one of 3 for me. For Walker,
Mark Friedman with Tulip.
So it's either going to be Tulip. Tulip actually. Yeah, let me make sure I answer Vlad's question. I want to explain why those 3 bronze are the most surprising. Make sure I answer that question, Zach. Okay. Why are they the ones that surprise people? We're kind of jumping around. I want to make sure I cover these things. So for me, what was the best the wow presentation for me? It was Google Cloud. It was Litmus. It was Ignition and CirrusLink. And I'll tell you why. Okay, Google Cloud and Litmus.
Hive MQ with Pulse. That was
Well,
like,
yeah, but the thing is the thing is I knew about Pulse the week before.
yeah.
I had already had a presentation, okay,
So
for
it
Pulse.
wasn't a
So
big shock for you.
correct. But then you have so inductive automation and Cirrus Link, they actually they incorporated a SESME profile, consuming a SESME profile in their presentation. So they were showing,
and they built it on the fly.
Right, and they built it on the fly, and they were really showing what standardization is going to look like, and we're actually going to make that a requirement in next year's show. I'll talk about that here in a minute. Litmus showed off their generative AI tool that's just embedded in Litmus Edge, and you know, I just we're going to publish that presentation. You'll hear what I said during the presentation. You'll know why it was impressive. You should take the time to reach out to Litmus and look at the presentation. It's pretty sick and it's groundbreaking. You know, basically they're doing sequential advanced reasoning using generative AI in a flow diagram, and they are uniquely positioned to basically lay generative AI on top of data streams so that they can look at a series of conditions. If any of these conditions they could do something like this. I see a negative event, low OEE. I want you to go find me the 4 production lines that have the lowest performing OEE from those 4 production lines. So then you're going to use advanced reasoning to basically look at all the production lines and only return back the 4 that are the least performing over this last 1 hour. So you can basically go sequence, and use advanced reasoning at each step using artificial intelligence. And obviously the implications there is we can start taking administrative controls that are like in standard operating procedures, basically the things that we ask, the labor part we ask human beings to do to collect all the data before they make a decision. We can use generative AI to ensure that those steps are taken so that the human being can make the decision. Okay, so basically you can turn administrative controls into engineering controls. Okay, so that's why Litmus was really blown away. Google really showed the power of using Google Cloud to ingest via MDE, so the manufacturing data engine at scale, and then how to manipulate that data using AI in the cloud layer. And they have this really cool, I don't even know what they call it, a flow canvas, whatever it is. And they have a flow canvas where you can, you know, kind of in real time interact with your data and spit out reports and charts that you're going to use for specific decision making right now. And again, that's an advanced feature. If you're like me, I'm looking at that and going, oh, that's a next gen solution. If you're looking at what Litmus dropped, that's a next gen solution. If you're looking at what IA and Cirrus Link did with the SESME profile, that's a next gen solution. And then HiveMQ obviously did a masterclass in launching a new product. I mean, we had 5 product announcements at the show. Let me go through. Jonathan Wise, yes, Fireside Chat will be published publicly on the YouTube channel, and all the 17 right now we have 17 vendors who we graded as a home run, and all of the home runs will be published. We may change that. We may end up revoting. We may revote, you know what I mean, and go, okay, here's the, you know, we think these guys are agreeing. We're gonna
us to publish the worst ones too.
I mean, here's what I'm gonna do with the worst ones. Okay. I am currently thinking, okay, what do we do with the 3? There are 3/4 vendors who drastically underperformed, and obviously everybody knows now that there was one that just, you know, really just. I felt bad for that guy. I mean, honestly, I watched the video and I'm like, I felt terrible for him. So I'm not going to, you know, let me say this. I am going to tell you who I think the 17 greens are. I'm going to tell you who whatever it's the 14 or 15 blues. That's the good to greats. And then I'll tell you who the 3 or 4 reds are. I will tell, but I want to talk to their CEOs first. What I really want to do is the vendors who underperformed. I think it's only fair that we give them a chance to redeem themselves. If you look at the vendor that everybody knows about here, there was one session that was just horrific, and Amy Williams did her fucking job. She did exactly what she was supposed to do. Okay? It wasn't her fault that they came up there unprepared. However, there is a backstory. Okay? The person at their organization who was going to do the presentation got sick and couldn't come. Okay? They sent somebody who didn't have the technical knowledge and capability to do the presentation and knew nothing about what we were doing at the show. And he went up on stage and was not prepared. Okay. So there is a backstory. The backstory, it's not that they didn't take it seriously. It's that they sent somebody who had no idea what the show was about. They were like a fill-in and then put him on stage. And what should have happened is the guy on stage who got just eviscerated, and he should have been eviscerated. He should have said, "We're not prepared to go on stage. You know, we'd like to film our presentation when so and so is not sick anymore.
Have someone else.
Put somebody else up on stage instead of us." Okay, and that somebody would have been Aviva. If we had another spot, we would have put Aviva on stage. And let me explain to you why. In my opinion, Aviva, Tatsoft, and Mock Controls were the three most surprising bronzes. They're not the only, but they're the three most. If I got to pick, I got to pick. All right. Aviva did a fucking masterclass in, I mean, they've always been good at marketing. Okay. So let's just put it this way. It is, they got a 10 out of 10 in marketing. I mean, they even told the story along the line of connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize, find patterns, report, and solve.
Masterclass.
I mean, they walked step by step. I mean, and by the way, they were the only one who did that. And that wasn't in the rules. It wasn't like, oh, you got to do that. What it was they did their homework. They saw what we're teaching. They saw the language we're doing, and they said, hey, we're going to tell the story in connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize, find patterns, report, and solve. Number two, what they built was incredible. It was they built a phenomenal application, and they used multiple Aviva tools to do it, and it looked very impressive. And in fact, I said I gave them some feedback, and I said, hey, I would make some changes to this screen. But the customer would love to see this. I'm sure they would.
Incredible. It looked incredible.
The downside of Aviva was it was probably one of the most expensive proof of concepts. So if you were going to ask for that, you were going to certainly spend six figures, because just licensing alone, I think, was going to run $75,000 because of their minimum requirements. It's like $250, a month per user, or whatever, $250 a year. Users. Yeah. And 25 minimum users, right? So it was an expensive POC, but Aviva did a phenomenal job. All right. Why Tatsoft? Well, the reason Tatsoft was surprising was because they leveraged all of the new features in version 10 that nobody knew about in Frameworks version 10. And they were the only vendor to publicly serve their solution to the world. So they gave me a link, and they let me publish the link on my LinkedIn. And there were like 500 people who opened clients like immediately on their application. And that was awesome. They allowed us to serve the unified namespace through a Frameworks application out to the world. And that was surprising.
It was pretty cool.
Okay.
During yesterday's call with the students, the MES bootcamp, I pulled up the Vulture server because someone asked a question about the infrastructure, and I got to see the bandwidth and the CPU usage during the conference period. Like you could see during the day when everyone was hitting it, we had increased bandwidth, and like the CPU usage never got above 30% though.
We were peaking, to put it in perspective on the infrastructure, we were peaking at 80 million messages per minute on a hotel network. Okay. So to put it that 80 million messages is over 1 million messages a second on that infrastructure. The infrastructure, we had absolutely no problems whatsoever. So we were obviously using We were using clustered brokers in the cloud and behind a load balancer. Then we had a local broker that was bridged in the hotel. So whether you were publishing to the virtual factory on the hotel floor or whether you're in the cloud, everything was synced. Okay. The HiveMQ was just, I mean, obviously enterprise is their bread and butter. So I would have been shocked if, I mean, they have the largest UNS in the world runs on a HiveMQ broker, and it's like 400 million topics. Okay. So let me say this on the Reds. We're going to go through the vendors here in a second, and then we'll talk about what we want to do next year and get your guys' feedback. One last one, mock controls. Why was mock controls a bronze sponsor so shocking? Well, mock controls, 4.0 Hero, and Dustin Symes' company, is it JPL or
JPI?
JLP? JPI. I can never get Dustin's company right. It's JPI Solutions out of Alberta. That's Dustin Symes. Trent Christopher and 4.0 Hero. Trent's formerly of Omron. He has a company called 4.0 Hero. He's out of Cincinnati. And then Brian Pryby and Mock Controls, he's out of Toledo, Ohio. The three of them worked together on the Mock Controls booth. And they built 3 edge nodes that were panels with PLCs, Node-RED, UMH. They built full stack solutions that were all integrated together on the edge. Okay? And they used nearly all open source tools. Okay? Nearly all. The only thing that they weren't using that was open source was the software to program the PLCs. And I was shocked at what they brought, because if you were a techie, if you were a technologist, you wanted to deep dive on what they did. You wanted to go over there and go, explain to me, walk me through it, walk me through this architecture. So those are the 3 that, in my opinion, were the most surprising of the bronzes. Okay. Let's go. I want to go through our ranking. We've done an initial ranking of the vendors. Not everyone's going to agree with our ranking. This is Walker's ranking. Okay. I'm going to go back and watch all the videos again. Okay. So I may change this. So all I'm going to do is tell you who I think absolutely hit a home run. Okay. That is, they followed the rules. They answered the 4 questions, and they had a wow moment where that people were like, whoa. Okay. So you had to have a wow moment. You had to create buzz in order for you to get the home run. Okay. And there are 17 of them. So we're going to start with, let's start with the bronzes. So number 1, Aviva. Aviva got a green. They hit a home run. Only downside on Aviva's solution is too much money for a proof of concept. They got to figure out a way to make that $50,000 or less. But if they could do that solution for $50,000 or less on a POC, they'll wow some people. Number 2, Phoenix Contact. Okay. I would say that of all the vendors who should have gotten a lot of traffic for what they were showing off, Phoenix got the least. They just didn't get I just didn't see a lot of people at their booth. But when I looked at their presentation, I was like, whoa. These are the bronzes. Number 3, Listo. So they're an integrator, I think, out of Ireland. But I would say that of all the integrators outside of Mock Control, they were the ones who demonstrated a very deep understanding of digital transformation in their solution. And they actually told a very good story. Like, there was a wow moment. If you went to Listo, you'd walk away and go, wow. Okay. Eucodyne. Okay. So that's Constantine's company. They had Listo's in the UK. Sorry, not Ireland. And I know over there they get pissed off at that kind of shit. So Listo's in the UK. Okay. Eucodyne, Constantine, I would say of all the integrators, Eucodyne is the one. It was Eucodyne and Mock Controls who had the most people at their booth. Eucodyne had just a big, long fucking line the whole time. Same thing with Mock Controls, because they were showing, literally, they built a audible chat bot. So you could talk to the bot, ask it questions about our virtual factory, and it would give you results, and you could interact with your data with your voice. And if our goal was the art of the possible for the manufacturer on a common infrastructure, I mean, Eucodyne just fucking slayed it. Now, I'll say this. I expected them to slay it because Constantine, he's the CEO of that company. We've met a bunch of times. He's in Mastermind. He's, I've had a lot of conversations with him. Of all the vendors, he went and did a absolute deep dive on the solutions here. And a lot of the questions he asked, I was the customer. A lot of the questions he asked of me demonstrated a deep knowledge of customers' problems. So I wasn't shocked that he blew away. Tatsoft, they were a green. They were a home run. I was a little worried. I got to see the visualizations. Mark sent them to me a few days earlier. And I was like, and up until then, had no idea what they were doing. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they haven't asked me any questions or anything. And they slayed it. In fact, I shared their visualization. I think it's still available. If you go to my LinkedIn, the link is in there. You can see what they built. And what I want you and encourage you to do, if that link is still live, hey, Vaughn, go to my LinkedIn, click on that link and see if it still opens. One of the things that I think a lot of people don't know is if you navigate through the unified namespace and go down to any asset and click on an asset, it's going to update the visualization. And depending upon which functional namespace you click on in the UNS, it'll load a different visualization. It's very impressive what they did. Mock controls, obviously, I've already explained. And then let's go to the silvers. Let's do concept reply and Snowflake. Remus Pop fucking slayed. You want to talk about that is a guy you want on stage. Remus Pop, if you want Remus on stage, talking solutions. What was really, really cool, so they actually hit an absolute home run. And what the wow moment was for concept reply and Snowflake was showing how to use, and I can't remember the AI tool inside of Snowflake that they were using, but they were showing the embedded AI tool and interacting with the data. And it was kind of like Snowflake's big moment to the industry about, hey, this is what commoditizing data could be. He didn't even go into the platform for selling data. He just consumed data from the UNS on the assets, and then he interacted with it using the AI tools in Snowflake. And it was a big wow moment.
Google there, the global manufacturing CTO.
Yes.
Snowflake.
Yep, from Snowflake. Obviously, I'm going to come back to this one right here. Okay, Intellic integration. Now, obviously, I didn't vote on this. I let everybody else vote. Here's why Intellic had to. So they were a silver sponsor. They had an opportunity to go on stage. They chose not to present. One of the reasons we did that was we asked Intellic integration not to do a traditional ProveIt session. And the reason why was we thought they would have an unfair advantage over the other vendors. So obviously, because they're so close to me, we work so closely together. I trained everybody there. So what we decided to do was you guys won't go on stage. And what they did was they did a Factorio integration to UNS. So they took Factorio, the video game, and they integrated it into the UNS and showed that off on the left-hand screen. And on the right-hand side, they basically went through, they answered questions about, there you go, right there. Is that live still?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome if it is. Snowflake is definitely way cheaper, Dylan, because they're breaking apart warehouse and compute. By the way, that $2,500 a month on the Google is going to be how much inferencing are you doing? So it's really how much inferencing. And I think the Snowflake was $600 a month. I'm pretty sure what Remus was saying was his costs were $600. The big advantage of Snowflake is that they break out the warehousing and the compute. So, but let me get back to Intellic. Yeah. By the way, if I call up a question, please bring it up on the screen so the audience knows. Okay. So if you Dylan Dufresne, Snowflake versus Google pricing, it was Google's 2,500 is if you're doing that much inferencing, not if you're just doing the warehousing. Because my solution's like $9 a month in Google Cloud, and Snowflake's was like $600. If you looked at the inferencing costs it would be 2,500 versus 600. David Pavone, are all these demos published? David, all of the home runs that I'm going through, all the greens, they're going to be published. We're going through all the footage. We're filming. We're putting together the videos. They have to. They're going to the vendors, and they're also going to go on our YouTube channel. Then we are going to select a handful of the good to great, the blue ones, and we're going to publish them. So of the 35 presentations that happened, 36 vendors, 35 presentations. Of the 35 presentations, maybe 20 to 21 of them are going to be published. All the home runs, any of the ones where the consensus this was a home run, that's getting published. All right, and then on the other side, Intellic had a series of presentations where they followed the rules, but what they did was they basically walked through the process of digital transformation from an architectural perspective, and their booth was just slammed. I mean, the whole time. Software Toolbox, okay, Software Toolbox was a silver sponsor, and they hit a home run. They get credit for the most exciting presentation. Okay,
I told you they were gonna slay it, dude. I told you.
So what they did was they used AI. So Software Toolbox showed how you can use their toolbox of tools to build a solution that would be really functional for a manufacturer.
With a $20
and it was
web
using
camera.
a camera. Yeah, they used the $20 web camera to show how you could use Software Toolbox and some other out-of-the-box solutions to see if an operator is wearing a hard hat on the production line and stop the production line. Okay, great. They did an outstanding job. They followed the rules and they answered the 4 questions. And it was actually a very inexpensive solution. Opto 22. So obviously Opto 22 was going to slay. It's kind of unfair. Benson's been doing this. He knows his shit. He knows how to tell a story. He knows how to he made the announcement that the Groove Epic's going to be supporting Docker containers on the edge. That is a huge announcement, like enormous. Now an Opto 22 can become
edge
a managed node underneath Portainer now. So you could literally manage deployment of the containers on an Opto 22 through Portainer. I mean, it just basically seamlessly integrates. Not that the Groove Epic shouldn't already be your go-to IoT PLC solution in that $2,500 to $10,000 range, right? Depending upon, but they just slayed that. In fact, we had Opto 22 go first on Tuesday. They were the first ProveIt session. And the reason we selected Opto 22 is because we knew there was no chance that Benson was going to drop the ball. We knew that the first presentation, if we put Opto 22 there, he would nail it. And he did. Okay. So you definitely want to watch that presentation. Just the storytelling alone was exceptional. They just, I'm going to come back to this other one. Maintenance. So this is in the gold sponsors. So Maintenance, by the way, was one of 4 CMMSs that wanted to sponsor. They were the only one that met the minimum technical requirements so that they can integrate to the UNS. And what Maintenance, this was their coming out party. When I was doing a whole thing about, hey, who had the best presentation, Maintenance was in the top 5 of because it was showing how CMMS can be a function in a much larger open ecosystem, and how Maintenance can produce and consume events from other places. So like one of the biggest things in CMMS is if I want to really use mean time to repair and mean time between failure to optimize my preventative maintenance program and my break fix program, there are 9 events I need to optimize. Okay. We'll shoot a video on what those 9 events are, but basically it starts with the failure on the asset. Then it's the first intervention by the operator, the opening of the work order of the operator, the receipt of the work order by mechanic or electrician, them arriving at the asset, right? Okay. Maintenance is the only CMMS that qualified to even be at the show. And then they did an excellent job of demonstrating how their platform can be leveraged in a much larger ecosystem. It was their big,
user feedback on LinkedIn as well. They're tagging Maintenance as one of the companies that did really well.
Yes. And what's really funny, I want to say something. Who's that guy, the troll guy from the Bay, Leaf
Oh yeah,
Kirshen, or whatever the hell his name is? Leaf Kirshen. All right. So this guy, you know, you guys may see him. He's a troll. Everybody says, Walker, don't give these people oxygen. Yes, I give oxygen to trolls because I like to end their careers. Okay. We have been trying to get Leaf to come on the podcast. He has been dodging the podcast. He knows I'll ruin his career.
What
okay.
is
He knows
point?
he knows there's no chance he's going to look like an idiot.
He doesn't like litmus or something.
And he's just,
what's his deal?
His issue is, I think, is that I don't want to bash the guy because he's clearly really smart, but I do want to address the fact that he like took a shot at Maintenance, and he's like, these are just a bunch of Bay Area guys with no manufacturing experience. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I would be concerned if somebody who doesn't have manufacturing experience is trying to sell me something.
Yeah, but not if
that is not an exclusive.
They fucking proved it.
Correct. Not if they prove that they can solve my problem. Like, just because you don't have the experience, that not having experience is the red flag. But if they can demonstrate that it's not a red flag, that hey, listen, we understand your problem. You know, we understand the problem.
And then you got Brittany. She's selling Mastermind. She's selling clients.
Maintenance fucking slayed it. This isn't me just saying, oh, Maintenance was awesome.
You're being honest. They slayed it.
They proved it on stage. The next green was High Bite, obviously High Bite. I mean, it was almost unfair, if I'm being honest with you, because this show was kind of tailor-made for High Bite's feature set. I mean, you know, this was easy for them. So I sing High Bite's praises enough, but they were definitely in the five best presentations. One of the things
that the users came away from was they got to see like where you would use High Bite and where you would use Litmus.
Yes.
And where you would use HiveMQ.
Yes.
Like they got to really understand how these pieces kind of interplay together.
Yes. Well, Vlad, I originally thought he has a good point. It's hard to build if you have no one with experience. However, you need to see what they've actually built, and Maintenance definitely has sales. Yes, he has a valid point on the surface, Vlad, 100%. If you say, hey, listen, the guy who runs this company doesn't have any manufacturing experience. He's never worked on the plant floor. Okay. That means as a consumer, you have to see, okay, what does not working on the plant floor mean? It means there's a chance you don't understand the actual problems that manufacturers have. So what you have to do is test for whether or not they understand the problems. I have met with a half dozen people at Maintenance. They flew out here. They came out to Dallas, met in our office. I drilled Nick and his team. One of his sales guys is in Frisco up here. The guy, the military guy who's like the head of their sales group, I can't remember his name, but who I've talked to a lot.
David
I have asked lots. David E. Yeah. Listen, I asked them lots of questions about whether or not they understand the customer's problem, and believe you me, they understand the problem. I mean, by the way, they couldn't have built the presentation they did if they didn't. All right. Obviously Litmus hit a home run. I mean, it was a masterclass, if I'm being honest with you. They hit an absolute home run. What's even crazy here, you want to hear something crazy?
Correctly, you can you can like generate edge deployments using their generative AI technology, right? Yeah.
Yes. You can scale Litmus Edge using generative AI. Using natural language, you can tell the Litmus orchestrator that you want to deploy to these 4 sites. You want to take this architecture, and I want to deploy to those 4 sites, and it'll just do it for you. And then you do the last mile. Okay, now that's a novelty. Are you really going to do that in production? Maybe. You may. That wasn't the most impressive part. The most impressive part was, I don't even know what Vatzel called it. I mean, I don't even know what that part of it is, but it's basically a canvas with function blocks where I can run generative AI on each step and do advanced reasoning on each step. And the implication is I can turn administrative controls into engineering controls. So I can take an SOP and I can reformat an SOP for AI to do the execution. And Litmus is uniquely positioned to do that Because if you think about what Litmus is, I hate the fact they call it Litmus Edge. I've told Vatzel this. It's not an edge thing. I know you call it edge, but it's not edge. Here's where Litmus is. There's 5 layers in the automation stack: PLC, HMI, SCADA, MES, ERP, cloud. Litmus is the shim. It's the bus that runs up and down the whole side of that stack. It unifies together all of those layers, and it gives you the ability to build functions inside that bus, business functions. Okay. The only thing in Connect, Collect, Store, Analyze, Visualize, Find Patterns, Report, Solve that Litmus doesn't do really well is visualize. And they will say to you, we are not a visualization platform. Use other tools for that. But you can do some rudimentary visualizations in Grafana and that kind of stuff, but you're not going to do like advanced dashboarding in Litmus. That's not what it's for. But it is that layer there, and they are uniquely positioned. Litmus, HiByte, Maestro Hub, a couple of other tools are uniquely positioned to do the AI solution that Vatzel demoed, because they are literally sitting on top of all the data streams. The data streams are running through their platform, all of them. So that means there is no stream that they can't leverage AI on. There's no limitation. Like that, clearly that's the future of the Litmus platform. Yeah, honestly, it really should be called Litmus Data Management or Litmus. It really should be Litmus Data Management Platform or something. The edge part connotes that Litmus runs on the edge, and it really doesn't. Even in most applications, edge is the plant. It's not the asset. The instance of Litmus Edge is actually it's a one-to-one relationship between Litmus Edge and the site in most cases.
Yeah.
You can have multiple instances at a site.
Plant level at Litmus Edge.
Right. But did Litmus fucking hit a 5-run home run? You bet your ass they did. And they had one of the biggest wow moments, for sure. HiveMQ had probably the wow moment. I mean, you want to talk about a masterclass in how to launch a product? Holy shit.
Magnus fucking slayed it, dude.
Yeah, HiveMQ, that was a masterclass in how to launch a product. And here's how we know.
And then Dominic came up on stage.
Yes. Now HiveMQ, obviously, so HiveMQ's ProveIt session was they were our architecture. Like, if you want to know, the virtual factory was built on HiveMQ, HiByte, Ignition, Python, MySQL, Portainer. Without Portainer, we couldn't have done it. Portainer played a huge role in managing the virtual factory. And Dell hardware. That was our infrastructure. Okay. That was our infrastructure. So HiveMQ's ProveIt session was actually the virtual factory infrastructure. So they spent a lot of time talking about other elements. You know, they were like, the virtual factory is our ProveIt session. They talk about security module, a lot of the extensions, a lot of, you know, their toolkit for building extensions. They talked about a lot of that stuff. And then they launched Pulse, HiveMQ Pulse, which is a fucking game changer. Just like Litmus announcing the 2 new major features in Litmus Edge, which, as far as I know, are not going to cost more, or they're going to cost, it's going to be a negligible cost. HiveMQ launched basically the future of their platform, which is Pulse.
Unified,
and
if I understand it, it's like unified discovery and queryability layer, or unified query and discoverability layer. Just look at it as a data management. Pulse is a data management, and it's all about unlocking the potential in your data. Pulse is, and Pulse is HiveMQ is in the same position Litmus is in. They literally are the bus for the data streams. So they are uniquely positioned to do this, right? It's like, holy shit. They also talked about
and what's crazy is, yes, but that wasn't the big wow. Everybody's going to watch their presentation. Let me go back to two other ones.
Who else got the wow?
Inductive automation, inductive automation, Cirrus Link. Okay. Now, obviously, they were going to crush it. I mean, this is what IA does. You know, they had Arlen, for God's sakes. I mean, it's like, come on. Yes, they were going to crush it. If they didn't hit a home run, I would have been shocked. Okay. They had Travis Cox and they had Arlen Nipper doing their ProveIt session. I mean, come on.
That's unfair,
but
dude.
but the wow moment was the Sesame profile. The wow moment was, okay, that's what using a standard profile in a unified namespace does. Basically, the client is publishing a profile into the UNS, and then another client can consume the profile and know
the model inside of Ignition.
Correct.
And instantiate
and so,
in instance.
And so we think we're going to make that a requirement next year for vendors, that they're going to have to use a profile. They're going to have to publish a profile into the UNS. Let me make sure I got, and then last but not least, I think the general consensus among 70% of the audience is that Tulip had the best presentation and blew everyone away. And now it was a whole host of reasons, but the big reason with Tulip was just the two use cases they picked. So they really did a great job of demonstrating how Tulip is an operations platform and how easy it is to build applications inside that platform quickly, and how they were just basically ingesting infrastructure and then using Tulip as an application layer. But they demonstrated two things that I just really blew everyone away. Number one, Mark Friedman's the one who built their application. They and Eric Marendette, he was up there on stage with them. So obviously, having Mark and Eric up there is like having Travis and Arlen on inductive automation stage. I mean, it's the same, it's apples to apples there. But what they really showed, they showed a deep understanding of the virtual factory. Mark Friedman was the only person, he was the only developer who found the little Easter egg in the virtual factory. And the Easter egg was there were 89 scheduled deviations in the month of December in the data. Okay. He had it as 90, but it was actually 89. There were 89 scheduled deviations in the month of December in our virtual factory. He identified it. And then he built a dashboard that showed that. Hey, I'm going to answer Viken's question here in a second. And actually, we have Jonathan Wise on here too. So Jonathan Wise from Sesame, who's a CTO at Sesame. But I'll answer Viken's question here, which is, what does publishing the profile mean? Publishing the UDT to the UNS. I'll answer that question here in a second. I'm gonna answer it from a higher level. I'm not going to answer it from within the context of inductive automation, because I want people to understand why profiles are important. Okay, not just being able to publish one, being able to do that with Ignition. Tulip demonstrated they understood a deep understanding of the virtual factory, and they built a solution that would help operators, supervisors, and managers learn why those 90 scheduled deviations happened in the month of December. Piece. And then the second use case was they identified the gap at this actual facility, which is the material handler is not integrated into the infrastructure. The only operator who is not a digital node in the ecosystem is the material handler. So they built an application that unified together operator, supervisor, and material handler in the same application layer. 3 different applications, one for each, but they were firing events. And so the operator would always know the state of their raw material. Where is the raw material that I need to put on this press in the next 10 minutes? They were integrated together. They understood they demonstrated a deep understanding of by the way, those are 2 problems this customer actually has. And other people identified the material handler issue. Tulip was the only one who identified the schedule deviation. I do want to say this. Machine Metrics also identified the schedule deviation, but they never implemented it in their application. But Machine Metrics did know there were 90 schedule deviations in the month of December. Let me answer Viken's, and I want to make sure I got everybody. Flow. So I'm gonna read off all the greens just in case. HiveMQ, Litmus, HiByte, MaintainX, Inductive Automation, CirrusLink, Opto22, Software Toolbox, Intellic Integration, Flow Software, Tulip, Concept Reply and Snowflake, Tatsoft, Eucodyne, Listo, Phoenix Contact, Aviva, and mock controls. Those are your 100%. Those presentations are all being published, and then some of the blues will be published, and we will not publish any of the reds. I will tell you who the reds were. Once I talk to their CEOs and we come up with a plan for them to be able to kind of redeem themselves.
Those
it's
greens,
not,
they not only proved it, they hit a home run.
They didn't just prove it, they slayed it. You know what I mean? Like, even if you're a blue, your presentation could have been great.
Still proved.
It could have been a great presentation, but there was no wow
There's
moment.
There's gonna be some people who, for example, like, why wasn't I agreeing? You know.
So our two title sponsors, Dell Technologies and Google Cloud, they both got blues, and I was way impressed with both solutions. As an advanced developer, you know, I would expect that, say, Dylan Dufresne would also have been impressed with what Google Cloud and Dell did, like in terms of the implications and what they showed. But there was no wow moment in their presentations. Like when Google Cloud did their presentation, the reveal landed very soft. It was like, wait a minute.
You had to have a wow.
People should have been
to really hit a home run to get a green.
Yeah, the audience should have all been buzzing, but they weren't. Here's how you know HiveMQ was buzzing, and here's how you know Intelligent Integration was buzzing. You want to know who had the most? The two vendors who had the most scans of end users. Intelligent Integration number 1, HiveMQ number 2. And by the way, if you look at these greens, I went back and looked at the data. All of these ones I've listed, they are literally 1 through 17 in terms of scans. So they could scan the badges of people who came to their booth to ask questions about their presentations. There's a lot of scans
at the end of the day.
So there were a lot of scans, thousands and thousands of scans. All right, let me answer Viken's question. What does publishing a profile mean? Publishing the UDT to the UNS. Here's what a profile is. A profile is a definition. It is a standardized definition. Okay? So the way that the implications for a profile are this. If I'm just using MQTT and I set up a subscription to an MQTT broker, I've got a series of topics. I'm going to set up a subscription to a topic. I have to do my parsing on my own. I have to that payload could be anything. That namespace could be structured anyway. Okay. And I have to know how it's structured, or I have to learn how it's structured so that I can configure my client to get the most out of the data that's in that namespace. A profile as a client, let's say I'm connecting. What I want to do, a profile would give me at the end of the day, I would want to publish. I'm a client. Let's say I'm a client that's managing a tank. I want to publish when I connect to the infrastructure, not an MQTT, it could be any infrastructure, but let's say I'm publishing to an MQTT broker. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to publish my profile when I connect to the infrastructure so that any other client in the ecosystem, if they know how to parse the profile, say a SESME profile, they can consume my profile, and now they know how to parse my data.
The object model.
Correct. And I'm oversimplifying this. Okay, I'm oversimplifying this. Okay, here's another thing, Viken. If I'm a client and I publish into the infrastructure, we could set up a standard that says when you first connect to the infrastructure, consume the definition, the master profile that shows you how this UNS is structured. So when I connect, the first subscription I set up is the profile subscription. I consume it, and then it informs me as a client on how to parse that data and what to do with it. That's what profiles are for. Okay, the approach that SESME is taking. And, you know, they have a working group that Matt Paris from GE Appliances is on. They're working together across this whole huge group. They are doing it in as open a way as possible. As open a way as humanly possible. One that is not dependent upon transport. Let me say that. Jonathan and I had this whole conversation the other day because there was a misconception is, you know, most people think UNS is MQTT broker. It is not. You can build a UNS with an MQTT broker. But they're not dependent. The first UNS I ever built was in Excel using dynamic data exchange. The reason I could use dynamic data exchange is because it allowed me to subscribe to a topic in a cell. It was a subscription. Okay. We tried OPC-UA, but it just, yes, you can set up subscriptions, but you ran into serious scale issues with OPC-UA because of the legacy DA components that are in the standard.
What if Randy was there?
Then we did it with MQTT, and starting in 2014, we used OPC-UA, but we had to do a lot of scale interventions and for really large
Dynamic
unified
polling.
namespaces. You can build a UNS with DNP3. You can build a UNS with AMQP from Microsoft. What matters is edge-driven, report by exception, lightweight, open architecture, transport. Okay. Yes, and yeah, there you go, Jonathan. Right. Standardize the object model independent of the payload. What we are thinking is what we're thinking for next year is we're going to ask the vendors, they're going to have to use a SESME profile. We're going to start working on that now. We're actually going to make that announcement in a couple of weeks, so the vendors have kind of all year.
Add SESME
One of the things that
support.
Yep. And we're going to ask, we'll ask Matt Paris. We're going to ask Matt Paris to sit on the steering committee of ProveIt next year. And then he'll be that liaison with SESME, or we can ask Jonathan Wise to do it, or both of them if they want to sit on the steering committee for the show.
I gained a lot of respect for Jonathan Wise.
By the way,
fireside chat, you could tell he's pretty fucking smart,
Yeah, by the way, the DNP3 UNS would be a pain, Dustin Symes. Yeah, no kidding. However, when you're doing energy applications, DNP3 in a lot of cases is your only option.
At least
so if it's your only option, where you may convert, but in many cases it's your only option, and especially in the energy
they're going to be using the smart manufacturing profiles.
Let me go through a couple of observations, and I said this one in the recap video. One of the things that really stood out to me was how many vendors still sell features and benefits. Like, I had a call with Adam Kennedy today from Litmus, and Adam, we spent about an hour on the phone. I've talked to a handful of vendors since the show. I tried to take a few days off. I was on the ranch for a few days. I'm trying to take 2 weeks off, but you know how that works. One of the things that he pointed out was the audience, the attendees, were the technologists who solved the problems. So they were the people who could tell you the difference between Litmus and using Kepware and HiByte. They were the ones who could differentiate between, whereas the business person, they can't differentiate that. Like the decision maker who's just focused on business outcomes, they are ill-equipped to differentiate a Kepware HiByte stack with a Litmus edge solution. I mean, by the way, I use Litmus with HiByte all the time. But a very common stack is a Kepware HiByte stack. By the way, the decision whether or not to use one or the other is a very important architectural decision. And the answer to your question is dependent upon a whole host of conditions, right? What Adam was talking about was the people who were at this show were the people who could differentiate. And it's very important that next year we make sure that it's the same type of people. Like, most people don't know, we had it set up so that it was 60% end users minimum. Awesome, Jonathan. 60% end users minimum. So if it went down to 59% end users, no system integrator or vendor or other could buy a ticket. The next purchase had to be an end user to get you over the 60% threshold. So as we got more end users, then we allowed more integrators and others and vendors to come to the show as attendees, not as sponsors. Okay. Because we wanted the vast majority of the audience to be the people who have the problem. I want to say this, but it was amazing to me the number of vendors who aren't focused on the problem. They're not starting with the problem first. Annabelle Velarde, good question. I'll answer that here in a second. Actually, I'll give you guys a little nugget. I'll give you a controversial piece here. We'll put it in a separate video. I'll answer the Annabelle's question here in a second. One of the things that stood out was you can tell vendors are not accustomed to understanding the full solution, the strategy, the architecture, the project management philosophy. Are they using Agile? Are they using Waterfall? Are they iterating? You know, do they have an iteration philosophy that we're going to solve one problem on a common infrastructure, learn from that solution, and then take inventory of our problems, pick the next problem we want to solve, iterate. And we're doing that in Connect, Collect, Store, Analyze, Visualize, Find Patterns, Report, Solve. And then 3 years from now, we're just magically a smart business, and you are magically, but you're also smarter as an organization because you're learning from your data. And now we're ready to plug into a digital supply chain. I mean, the big thing would be Sesame is going to end up having to have a profile for a factory profile. Because if you think what Sesame's real value would be long-term, not today, their value today is asset level and area level, right? But the value in the future is being able to package a site, package a region, package a business, and drop it onto a supply chain.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the future. You're going to need a profiles for that. So that other nodes on the supply chain are going to be able to decipher the other links. And you're going to have to publish that onto the supply chain. But it's amazing to me the number of vendors who don't see that. So there are many who do. Like one of the pieces of feedback we got was Vlad and Dave, in their podcast today. You guys should watch the Manufacturing Hub. But they on their podcast today, they gave a bunch of feedback. Their feedback was the conference was a game changer. They loved the technical aspects. It was a highly technical conference. And some of their improvements for next year was make it harder on the vendors. Arlen Nipper said the same thing. When I asked Arlen, was this hard? He said it was easy. When I asked Travis, was this hard? He said it was easy. When I asked Aaron Semley, he said it was easy. Aaron Semley from Highbite, it was easy. You know, for Litmus, it was clearly easy. For Tulip, it was clearly easy. But for other vendors, less than half of them hit home runs. For many of the vendors, it was really hard. And many of them snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. I can't tell you the number of vendors who rebuilt their demos after the keynote and after Opto presented on Tuesday. They went back, Opto showed them the art of the possible, and then they scrambled. I can't tell you the number of vendors who did that. There was a lot.
That's good.
The other thing is more time, more days. We are going to make it harder. So here's what we're going to do next year. So we're going to end up having 2 virtual factories. Okay. So for virtual factory root nodes, the first one is going to be a single plant, one plant and it'll be a life sciences UNS virtual factory. And we're going to ask Skellig to build that. Amy Williams will lead that up. They've already volunteered. They will be in charge of that virtual factory, the life sciences virtual factory. And this is obviously all in the planning stages. We have not finalized any of this, but they have Amy said, I would love to do it. She raised her hand. So we're holding her to that. So we're going to have a single plant root node. So it'll be, not enterprise, but it'll be the name of whatever. Then it's going to be a plant, which will be a life sciences facility, virtual factory that Skellig is going to build on this infrastructure. Okay. The infrastructure we have right now, we're not changing the infrastructure. We're going to extend it. When you go to ProveIt next year, you're going to see this year's plant plus next year's plants. They're all going to be together. It's going to be iterative. We're going to add to it. Okay. So next year we're going to be doing 250 million messages per minute. This year we peaked at like 80 million. Okay. I'll explain the virtual factory subnet change Monday night. Was it on purpose? No, it was compliments of Dell. So we had Dell needed to do a run. Dustin Symes question. Dell needed to, when they were on stage, they weren't bringing their devices to the stage. They had to do a run back to their booth where the assets were actually at the booth, and they were going to stay at the booth. That required that we do a separate dry land, so we had to do a subnet change. Also, we are going to have a multi-plant virtual factory. So there will be a second root node. So it'll be whatever enterprise name, and then there will be multiple sites. So maybe 3 plants that are virtual factories, and they'll be like in the discrete manufacturing, maybe food and beverage. We haven't decided the vertical yet. We do have a company in plastics who volunteered to be virtual factory for next year, and they have 5 facilities. So we may have as many as 5 facilities in that root node. The vendors are going to have the option to pick which one they want to integrate to. So they can. So yeah, but then you got to get everyone to sign NDAs and stuff. I mean, it's like, do you know how much work? You want to know why this didn't happen?
No control. So it's secure.
But do you know why this this has never happened before? I spent $250,000 just in labor to put this show on, and the vast majority of that, half that money, was in building the virtual factory. It cost $130,000 in labor to build the virtual
36
factory.
Projects.
Because we had to. No, we'll do oil and gas maybe the year after. Ooh. Dustin. The oil and gas is on the list. It's on the list. But we're thinking that the multi-site will be plastics because that's who volunteered. It's 5 sites that are essentially greenfield. Like, we're going to have a ton of flexibility. So we meet with them here in a couple of weeks. And then the other rule is going to be that they're going to have to publish a SESME profile and consumer profile. We're going to make that a requirement.
We have the ability to change the industry by doing that.
Correct. Any vendor who was here this year will have an opportunity to come back next year. So they have first right of refusal. That's 35 vendors. It's 35 if you don't count Intellic. That's 35 vendors. That means we have 15 spots for new vendors. So we're going to go to 50 vendors for next year. And you might ask the question, why not go to 100? Why not? Maybe we go to 100 the year after. But, there's a rule, that is too, like too much growth. 35 to 15 is more than 25% growth. And you generally don't want to do that. And we're going like 35, 40% growth. So that's a big chunk. Yeah, it's a big bite. In business, if you look at, annual iterations, you want your growth, and 25 is a big chunk, and we're going to go 35, 40. We're going to go to 1,000 attendees, and we're going to have a bigger venue. We're going to go to a bigger venue. We're going to be looking at the Gaylord is really what we're looking at, Gaylord Texan. We're going to stick with a Marriott site, and we're going to bring all the same crew. So they're the same stage manager, producer, project manager. They've all said that they're willing to come with us and do it at the next year. So we don't have to teach people at the new venue what we do. We're going to bring, as long as we stay with Marriott, then we can bring that crew with us for our show. Yeah, because they work with Encore, which is Marriott's group. They're the group for events. Bigger venue, same time next year. Here's a couple interesting announcements. So the virtual factory is up, and it's going to remain up. In fact, it's going to stay up for, in perpetuity. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to go back to the vendors. It costs a lot. It's about $1,500 a month to not including licensing for the virtual factory. Marketing. So, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the vendors, and we're going to, I think what we're going to do is we're going to do some type of subscription to the virtual factory to help us pay for the overhead. Because right now we're just paying out $1,500 a month to keep the virtual factory up. And a lot of vendors have asked us, can we keep it up? So we've kept it up. It's up and running. So we have a whole cloud layer behind a load balancer, and then it bridges to a local server that's running in our office, in our data center. We are also going to make other people available. If you want to purchase a subscription to the virtual factory, if you're a vendor and you want to build a solution, we're going to let you. So we're going to give people access to the virtual factory on like a subscription basis. I have no idea what the commercials are because that's not my purview. What I will do is go to the team and go, this is what we're going to do. You guys figure out some pricing model that makes sense for everybody so that we don't go broke and it pays for the infrastructure. Yeah. And then because then what you'll have is, other vendors can just, now if I want to build demos, I just connect to I connect to the virtual factory. I've got all this data and you'll have the documentation. So you know what all the data means. We'll give you access to the documentation. Also, what we're going to do is we are going to let vendors how do we keep the momentum going? And for the vendors who couldn't come to the show this year, we're going to let vendors do ProveIt sessions in Mastermind. So if vendors want to do a ProveIt session, they're going to reach out to us. We'll announce it. They can reach out to us. We're going to give them the functional spec. We're going to give them the documentation. We're going to give them access to the virtual factory. They can build a ProveIt session. Then they will come to a Mastermind session and they will do their 45-minute presentation in Mastermind in front of our 400 students who are all in the industry. We will record that presentation. And if it's a great presentation, we will publish it publicly. And so that's going to give other vendors a chance to prove it without having to wait for next year.
We definitely need to do.
Go ahead.
I know that some of the Mastermind people, they got a special gift and it said Mastermind on their badge, but we definitely need to do more for them next year. Like the badge should be like a totally different color. And, we should do like a VIP lunch or something with the Mastermind students. I don't know.
Annabelle, for 2026, will you accept volunteers to work logistics on the ground, setup, troubleshooting, etc.? Yes. So we are going to lean on the advisory board more. The advisory board is the connection to the community. We are going to lean on the advisory board. Now that we know how to do this, it's just like in digital transformation when you first start. You want all the people involved in your first POC, your first 6 months, to be true believers, a small controlled group where you can control the outcome. We've demonstrated now that, we can do this, okay, and we know how to do it. So now we can bring more people in to help with the work. And so the plan is to rely on the advisory board to connect us with the community members who want to participate and support the show as volunteers. I mean, we had a network guy who did nothing but monitor the network the entire show. His name was Austin. He was with Encore. We paid for his, I think it was $10,000 or something for him. Just sit there and I mean, he built the infrastructure, but his job was to make sure nothing went wrong. And like literally, he just monitored the network the whole time. So yes, we will be leaning on the community. One last thing that we're going to do, and a lot of end users asked for this. I had a lot of meetings with end users, talked about the DTMA process when I was speaking, and they were like, I would love to do this digital transformation maturity assessment that you talk about, but is it possible for me to do it myself? Like, can we just buy the DTMA from you? You kick off our DTMA, you do our leadership meeting, we do everything else. And I said, that is a great idea. There were 3 different end users who asked that question. And I have a whole rule. If 3 people ask a question, I'm going to answer it. So, so we're going to do that. So we're going to figure out how to make the DTMA process available to end users so that they can do a DTMA themselves. And I'm not talking about, there's a lot of people who, there are integrators and stuff out there that use like a self-scoring system, as like for lead generation and stuff. And that's all a great idea. But I'm talking about like essentially allowing end users to use the actual DTMA process, not a stripped down version. So, we basically would package it.
Well, a lot of people, that's why they bought. That's why they invested in Mastermind, was to learn how to do that.
And then they can submit their scores to us and then get the results on the distribution. And that's
it.
Oh, I want to say this. Here's how you know. Oh, yeah, this is a good one. Will Litmus catch up to or even surpass Kepware? Okay. That's already happened. Okay. here is my unfettered opinion.
Even with the
on
Linux,
this.
the Linux
So
drivers?
I was actually just hired. So one of you guys don't know is that I get hired by a consulting for a firm out of New York City to advise on mergers and acquisitions. So, and they're called blind consulting calls. So essentially, like when Rockwell Automation bought Plex, I consulted on that acquisition. I just didn't know that Rockwell was buying Plex. I knew that some company wanted to buy an ERP. I figured it out that it was Plex because they asked me about Plex about 40 minutes into the call. And then like 9 days later, Rockwell announced the acquisition. So I figured out I had consulted on that call. So there's this firm that basically connects me with the people who are buying companies, or they also connect me with really large multinationals who are digitally transforming. And I just had one of these calls the other day. Okay. So, and they were asking questions about Litmus, Kepware, HighByte, Factory Talk, Cognite, the whole list of data ops and connectivity platforms. And they were asking me lots of questions about Litmus versus Kepware, Litmus versus HighByte, and I had to keep articulating, well, that's not really an apples to apples comparison. I mean, if Litmus is this big, huge rectangle, Kepware sits inside of it. Like it's not intersected. Kepware is a connectivity and a data hub platform. My opinion is okay. I love Litmus. I love Litmus. Okay, let me say this. But my opinion is Kepware makes the best drivers in the world. Okay? They make the best drivers in the world. And here's my argument. Once you configure a Kepware driver, once you configure your tag structure in KepServer EX, once you set up that connect collect layer with Kepware, you're never revisiting that. Kepware is never the problem. It's like their lab in Portland, how they develop drivers, they build incredible drivers. So once you're in that connect collect, you never got to worry. But here, the difference between Litmus's drivers and Kepware is nominal. So if Litmus is 99.99% reliable with their driver, Kepware is 99.9999% reliable. That's the difference we're talking about here. We're not talking 80 to 99%. Okay? Here's why Litmus is ahead. All right? Litmus is what Kepware would build if Kepware was building themselves 4 years ago. Like Litmus is what the folks at Kepware would do. Except Tony Payne is not there to do it. And PTC is not investing in the company. It's PTC's fault. Okay? It's PTC's fault. I'm going to make this. I want this to be a whole separate video. The leadership at PTC needs to sell Kepware. You must sell Kepware. If you don't sell Kepware, Kepware is going to die. Kepware is relying on their install base and only their install base, and that is PTC's fault. And if you don't do something, okay, they still have Sam Elsner. Okay? So of all the incredible people at Kepware, okay, they've lost a lot of incredible people, Kepware has. They have. But they haven't lost Sam Elsner yet. And if PTC doesn't do something, you're losing Sam Elsner. Now, he didn't tell me that. But Sam is not an idiot. Okay? He's going to see where the tea leaves are. Okay? What should Kepware do? What should they have done 5 years ago? They should have picked 10 drivers. They should have broken off a group in Kepware and developed a Linux-based platform so they could containerize Kepware Edge. Their future should be something that can run in Linux seamlessly and lightweight. Litmus does that. Litmus can write drivers. Literally, you know how Litmus writes drivers? They use machine learning to reverse engineer protocols to get them to 90% in 24 to 48 hours. And then they have a human being do the last mile. Kepware's not writing drivers like that. Kepware it's taking them months to write a driver start to finish. You know, it's like, how are they going to compete? And this is hard for me to say, but I have got to tell the truth here. PTC, you must sell Kepware. You are the problem. PTC, you are the problem. Kepware is not the problem. PTC, you are the problem. And this is not me being a fucking wise ass. I'm trying not to swear as much because my Christian brothers are telling me, hey, you got to represent the kingdom. It's hard for me, gang. It's very hard. Okay. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to stop swearing. But PTC is the problem. Here is the perfect scenario. The perfect scenario is the day after tomorrow, HiByte acquires Kepware. Is that going to happen? Of course not. But the perfect scenario is the day after tomorrow, HiByte acquires Kepware. Tony Payne is the CEO of HiByte. He used to be the CEO of Kepware. He used to be the president of Kepware. Everybody at HiByte is from Kepware. They know the business inside and out. They know the install base inside and out. HiByte buys Kepware. Okay? Immediately, Aaron Semley says, starting tomorrow, we're going to take all the brilliant people at Kepware and we're going to break off and we're going the Linux route. We are going to rebuild from the ground up. And we're going to put together a dev platform. We're going to put together a development strategy to convert all our drivers that are running in the native platform that we've been building over the last 20 years, and they're going to be able to run in Linux and be able to be deployed in containers.
To be able to do that.
So you would have the internal group at Kepware maintaining the install base that you have today. And that install base is enormous.
And just be able to configure your Kepware server with the YAML file.
Correct. And then Aaron Semley is now, so Aaron Semley at HiByte is in charge of building that data operations layer, and he's overseeing the development of the connectivity layer that's being built by the new group at Kepware.
Plus Kepware would.
Yes, that's what should happen. And let me say this, mark my words, you could take this to the bank. You could take it to the bank. Okay? If something like that does not happen, Kepware is going to die. Let me say it again. If something like that doesn't happen, Kepware is going to die. And it pains me to no end to say that.
They need a partner.
PTC, sell Kepware. HiByte, for the love of God. Go to the venture capitalists, go to somebody, get the capital, buy Kepware, do what I just said here. Trust me. Trust me. Trust me.
You can have
Here's why.
On the edge with all of your Kepware installs.
Here's why. How are you going to compete with Litmus? As more and more people are adopting Litmus, the price of Litmus is going to go down. So your price arguments with Litmus, they go away. How are you going to compete? How are you going to compete? Honestly, HiByte, they got no problem. HiByte's going nowhere. They're going to be $1 billion company for sure. Their addressable market is 100% of industry. Literally everyone in industry needs HiByte. Here's my concern with Litmus. Okay. And I love Vatzel. I love the team. I love all these. I'm just telling you the truth. Okay. My concern with Litmus is Litmus, in this industry, you've got to be able to point out what you're the expert at. We are the absolute best at this thing. Kepware is the best. It is beyond dispute. Kepware writes the best drivers. We could have a debate about it, but they write the best drivers. Does it take them longer? Absolutely. But they're still the best drivers. They are the Rolls-Royce. They're the Rolls-Royce running in a dated platform, one that I can't deploy in edge containers, which drives me insane.
You'd say Litmus is
okay,
Litmus
but they
is
still
the best solution.
I would say Litmus
because
is
they have end to end.
They're the best data management solution. And the reason why is because Litmus is MDE, manufacturing data enterprise, whatever. What is MDE at Google? But they are the best data management platform. But that's an abstraction. As a subset, I would say this: is Litmus the best at unlocking the potential in data? No, I would say they're right on par with HiByte. HiByte is the best at unlocking the potential. Yes, let me answer Tyler Judkins. Put this up here. Ectobox's presentation was underestimated. I liked how they were honest about where most end users were and brought up the importance of nailing the simple stuff before you make the jump to MES. Correct. Here's the reason Ectobox wasn't agreeing. There was no wow moment. There was no buzz. But Tyler, you're 1,000% correct. I loved Kevin Jones's presentation. I loved Ectobox's presentation. But the threshold for us
presentation,
was,
so he's gonna, you'll be able to watch it on their YouTube channel. We're just gonna only publish on our channel.
Yeah, but Ectoboxes will almost certainly be one of the blues that gets published. It's just there wasn't a wow moment. There wasn't a buzz.
We were hard.
Like we were hard. We were. I mean, I said to the team, there was a big, huge argument in that meeting when we were going through this. A huge argument, screaming, and I kept driving the team. Oh, that's a great line, Dylan Dufresne. Put that up there. Put that up on the screen, Zach. This is a great line. HiByte in flight, flow at rest. That describes where HiByte is in the data stream and where flow is in the data stream.
The UAF.
Yeah, Tyler, Ectobox's presentation was great. The only reason I'm not telling you all the blues is because if I tell you all the blues, you'll know who the reds were. Yeah. All right. Any containers? It's still dependent on a 32-bit JRE. Haha. Yes. Okay. Here we go. Ravi Walker. I know you have a DTMA process. Given that you're leaning on SESMI for the smart manufacturing profiles, will you also consider using their smart manufacturing assessment process that they have in place? I guess the answer to your question is, if the question is, would you consider? Yes, I would consider. Here's the problem with the roadmap tools. Okay. Or it's the gap for me. The three most important there's essentially three things that are really, really important that output from a DTMA. Number one, digital strategy. In order for a statement, digital strategy statement, this is why we want to be a digital company. Their roadmap tools don't say that. Okay, that component's not in the tools. Okay, it's not explicit. It is assumed. Number two, what are you good at? What are you bad at? What's missing?
It doesn't do that.
Okay, in those steps, no. First off, there is no discussion about what you're good at in the roadmap tools. It is looking for the gaps. But one of the things that you want in digital is you want to become better at the things you're good at. You don't want to just fix the problems. You want to strengthen the strengths. So what are you good at? What are you bad at? What's missing? Okay. And you're primarily looking at what you're bad at and what's missing. Here's a good example. In maintenance, when you're talking to the maintenance department and you're going, what are you good at? They'll go, putting out fires. If you ask them, what are you bad at? They'll say predicting failure. If you ask them what's missing, they'll say insight into current state, like access to the data I need so I can predict failures and I can stop putting out fires. And that's literally every single time you go to maintenance. Their roadmap tools don't explicitly do that. Number three, there is no comparison. There is no mechanism in their roadmap tools, although it is kind of assumed that there's no comparison to you against other people in real time. Like how behind am I? Like how behind am I? I love their tools, but there's a philosophy I have in DTMA. I don't look at the tools and go, these are garbage. I don't do that. I just go, oh, I don't know how I could use these tools for the three most important things I'm trying to get answered. Digital strategy. What are you good at? What are you bad at? What's missing? Right. I don't know. And then where am I relative to other people? And what I mean is in real time, like each year I could check in and see how am I maturing? How much did I gain? If my aggregate score was 54 last year and I rescore myself this year, and I went in absolute numbers, I went from a 54 aggregate to a 63 across the 10 pillars. That's a +9, but did the industry move +11? Therefore I fell backwards. That's missing in those tools. It's not missing in our DTMA process, but it is a very good question, Robbie. I love the tools. I believe that SESME will become a much larger piece of the future. Like, the fireside chat, I strongly encourage when we publish a fireside chat, watch it. It is a great discussion on standards. It's a great discussion on how standardized are we ready to be right now. There's a great discussion about why. Look at how simple everybody talks about the limitations of Sparkplug B, but most people don't acknowledge that because it is a simple standard, it has wide adoption.
Everybody was using it.
The barrier to entry is so low, therefore people are adopting it. This is the problem with OPC UA let's be honest. It's the problem with OPC UA. They have an adoption problem. And what good is the tech? What good is the tech if no one's using it? There's that famous video when Steve Jobs at Apple Developer Days in 98 or whatever it is, and he made the decision to get rid of, I don't know what it was, Open Tools, or he made some decision to OpenDoc, and a developer stood up and said, he hated I want you to explicitly give me the reasons you got rid of OpenDoc, and I want you to explain, what you've been doing the last 5 years. It was basically a shot. Like, why are you qualified to make the decision to get rid of this awesome technology? And Jobs thought for a moment. And then in a roundabout way, he said, it doesn't matter how awesome that tech is. It doesn't matter how smart you are. No one was buying your shit. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. That adoption is what matters in standards, gang. How deep does your cognitive dissonance have to run for you for thousands of people to write thousands and thousands of pages of standards, OPC UA, OPC Foundation? No one adopts it, and you don't think there's a problem.
It's just
you think the problem is it's messaging, it's theory. No, it's not. The old adage is we're as good as our record says we are. You know what I mean? Oh, right here, Ravi. Do you think the SESME Smart Manufacturing Profile will replace Sparkplug or OPC UA in the IoT data exchange context? No. I think they're going to work together. I think that OPC UA's best chance for survival is SESME profiles. Are SESME profiles. And SESME is agnostic and open, transport agnostic and open, but you can use Sparkplug and SESME profiles together, and you can use OPC UA and SESME profiles together. So I do not believe they're going to replace. I think there's going to be a symbiotic
augmented
relationship. John Maldonado, is the virtual factory stack open sourced in any way?
When we publish the presentations.
Yeah, do me a favor and throw Jonathan's comments in, his answers. So where he says agreed, profiles are not a replacement. Yep. If it were open sourced and self-hostable, that would be a good alternative to a subscription model. Here's the problem with that, John, is we want all the nodes to interoperate with one another. So if we open source it, then you're basically replicating virtual factory, but you would be the only node. What we want are the vendors interoperating with one another.
The network effect.
Machine Metrics was using Aviva's OEE calculations, for example. So was Tulip. Right. And right now, if you go to the virtual factory, I think like 15 of the vendors are still connected, publishing. Their demos are still running. And they're sharing data with one another. Sorry, I got to answer this message. But it's a good point, John. A standard Achilles heel is how well products implement it. Yes. The thing that Sesme's doing, they're doing a lot of things right. But the thing that I think they've done the most right is if you want to learn what a Sesme profile is, it's not hard. The barrier to entry is very, very low. And what we're going to demonstrate next year by we'll have Matt Paris or Jonathan pick the profile that we want vendors to use, or they can pick their own, but we're going to pick a simple one to implement. And we're going to make it a requirement. We're going to put it in the documentation. Yeah. I mean, again, I think Matt Paris should be the one. I think we should bring Matt into the steering committee and then be on the technical subcommittee. And when we're writing the specification for the vendors and we say, here's what needs to happen. Because, at the end of the day, hey, put Annabelle's comment up there. Matt Paris, will you drop the link to the correct GitHub repo? Jonathan Wise could drop it in there too, because he's on YouTube also. We just have to get Michael Brown. We just have to. Yes, Michael, we do. No truer words have ever been stated. Yeah, I mean, I can say this. We're going to wrap it up here in a second. If you guys have any questions, I'll answer them. But we have a bunch of announcements coming up in the next month. We're going to announce the show in the next 4 weeks. What we're going to do is we're going to extend an offer to all the vendors who participated this year, and they will get their spots if they want them. We may not do that every year, but we're going to do it this year. We are going to talk to the 3 companies. There's actually 3/4. There's one vendor we haven't scored yet because we don't have consensus on whether they're red or blue. We're going to give the 3 that dropped the ball a chance to redeem themselves, redo it if they want to, and then we'll film it. I think that's right. I only think it's right and fair. We don't want anyone. I'm a firm believer that you don't give up on someone until they give up on themselves. That's my management style. I do not give up on anyone. If you don't ever want me to fire you, don't ever give up on yourself, because I won't. I will not give up on you. And I'm not going to give up on a vendor until they. Now, if any of these 3 vendors disagree with our scoring, I mean, it's going to be pretty easy if you just show them the video. You didn't follow these rules. You didn't answer these questions. I mean, it's not that. Yeah, or show up after you've been fired. Yeah, we had an employee who got fired. She got grouped into. That's a great story. I've told it in Mastermind. But we had there was a group that got fired together. We don't, it was like we hardly ever fire anyone, but we ended up firing 3 people together, and one of them came to the office the next day. And when I asked her why she was there, she said, "I belong here." She's like, "I don't agree. And here's why I belong here. I believe in the values. I believe in the mission. I understand why I was grouped in with them, but I belong here." And I said, "Hell yeah." Get in your office. Let's get to work. Let's do it. Dylan Dufresne, I'm hoping there are enough spots available that we can get a vendor spot next year. Here's what's going to happen. Okay. Dylan, if you want a vendor spot, you have a vendor spot. Vaughn, add him to the list. So we've got Ricardo we're going to reach out to. And Dylan, Dylan, I know that you'll meet the minimum technical requirements. So we review the vendor and we go, okay, are they even capable of what it is we're going to ask them to do, first off? But Dylan, if you want a spot, you guys will get a spot. What's going to happen is we will extend to these vendors. We're going to say, hey, we're going to do 50 vendors next year. We've got 35 that have an option to come back. And then they can put deposits down on next year. We'll help use that for the funding to secure. I think we have about $100,000 that we carried over.
We
that
need
we'll
to
use.
send me to 2 shows this year. I need to go to the Automation Ladies OT Skatacon because they showed up to our conference, and then an IA's conference that's going to be at the bigger venue.
Yes, Dustin, if you want to be a vendor like JPI, it's JPI, right? Or LPI? JPI.
yeah.
Yeah, Dustin, if you want to be a vendor, JPI standalone, like not do a mock thing. I honestly, if I'm an integrator, I want to collab.
Like hall, you know?
Yeah, and we're gonna do that. We're gonna break the integrators out. We're gonna change the bronze. Like there was the people who were in the far end of the Fort Worth, so that they have better traffic. We're not going to be in that venue. We'll be in a different venue next year, but we'll actually lay it out a little bit better. The layout was awesome, but the people who were in the very, very back wall, they had the least amount of traffic, even though they said they loved it. It was noticeable to me that they had the least amount of traffic. So Vaughn, add Dustin's company on there and Dylan's.
Like a bunch of people and saying hi.
And Dylan, I cannot believe, Dylan, I cannot believe you did not come find me and take a photo. Dude, like, why didn't you come find me so we could take a photo together, man? When I found out you were there and you didn't come talk to me, I'm like, what?
I why did he?
I know, but he didn't come. And he's like, Dylan's like, yeah, I was hurt. Still think it should be open sourced. Bring your own infrastructure. The problem is that what we're trying to replicate is existing infrastructure. The minimum technical requirements are you will interoperate through this. Yeah. And also the levels are going to be, we're going to still have bronze, silver, gold title. However, there will be a bigger gap between bronze sponsors and silver sponsors.
Going on stage was the most valuable aspect.
Yeah, being on stage.
Getting a bronze booth is like you're getting the 4 tickets and you're getting a space to call your own. So it's really, there's a lot of value at bronze, but obviously there's even more at presenting and going on stage.
Matthew Paris is a good point. Different tracks, challenges for next year, beginner, intermediate, advanced. That's what we're trying to do with the different plant layouts. So they'll have the single plant with life sciences, multi-plant, discrete. We're trying to, what we want to do is give the vendors options based on their aptitude. Like, I mean, inductive automation and Cirrus Link are going to slay. You know what I mean? Like Opto 22 is going to slay in this architecture. HiByte's going to slay in this architecture. Like we have to figure out a way where, and here's another thing we want to do. We're going to have the audience score. You know how we had this year, you guys ask questions anonymously through the app. You scan the QR code and ask the question. We're gonna have the audience score the presentation, and at the end of the presentation, we're gonna show the score. That means
it's gonna be even better next year. Like no cap. Like it's gonna be.
Oh, I mean the big thing for next year is, think about this, gang. Everyone's gonna come.
We gotta do a live stream, dude.
Yeah, we have a whole host of lessons learned. Dylan and Frayne, I'll answer this and then we'll get out of here. Looking busy. Let me just say, one of the people I did not mention when they asked me, that's a good idea too, Matt. When people asked me who were the most, like who on the team did you want to give a shout out to? I did not give a shout out to Vaughn. And I should have, because he had the worst job at the show. He was my body man for the whole show. So he had to be with me the whole time. And his job was to make sure I got to where I'm supposed, because I'm going to talk to everyone. If somebody wants to talk to me, they want to take a photo, the team knows if they want to talk to me and have a conversation, or they want to take a photo or whatever, I am not blowing anyone off. Like if someone's going to get 30 seconds with me, I'm going to make that 30 seconds meaningful. Like, and the team knows it. But Vaughn also knows that he's got to get me to wherever I'm supposed to go. Like, I had meetings with, we had a conference room upstairs and I had meetings with like large multinationals and I got it. Those people they don't want to wait. I got to be in that room, and Vaughn's job is to get me there. his job is also to like, you know, make sure, like, I don't keep my own notes. It's like, oh, hey, we're going to set up a meeting. And, you know, he had the worst job and I did not give him a shout out. You know what I mean? And it was like, it's terrible. Like he was stuck with me the whole week.
Vaughn fucking
He was my body man. Yeah. But Robbie, I was discussing this with others. I think extra credit should be given to demonstrating a multi-vendor solution. Yes, agreed. What you and Matt are saying, absolutely, I agree with. Yeah, I agree with. And I want to give one. I want to close with this shout out. So 15 different people had a chance to tell me that they came to this show, they took vacation, they bought their own ticket, and they paid their own way because their employers didn't approve it. 15 told me, the team told me of another 10. So that means 25 of the 689 who were there paid their own way. Okay.
That's crazy.
Okay. If you're an employer, yes, we had someone from New Zealand, someone from Sweden, someone from South Africa pay their own way. Think about that.
That's epic.
Like it's mind-boggling. That's how important the show was. And I'll say this, and we one of the things that we wanted to do was get all the vendors together and chip in and basically split the money evenly among those people, because people should not be coming to this show on their own dime. You know, their employers are the ones who are getting the benefit. And shame on you. Shame on you, Mr. Employer, if you did not pay for your team.
The first year, you could get away with saying, well, you know, these guys have never put a show on before, but next year there's no excuse.
So let me say this, and we'll clip Vaughn. I want you to clip this piece here. If you came to ProveIt on your own dime, will you please reach out to someone on our team and let Vaughn know who you are with your contact information? And we're going to try and do something for you. Okay, obviously, this is the honor system. If your employer paid, don't do this. But if you paid your own way, please reach out to Vaughn at 40solutions.com, 40solutions.com, Vaughn at 40solutions.com with your contact info, and we're going to try and do something for you. We're going to go to the vendors, and we're going to see if we can't do something, because it is not right. It's amazing you did, and it means that the show is important. You know what I mean? Daniel Lydiard. So Daniel, please make sure you email Vaughn. We're going to try and do something for you guys. I have no idea what we're going to do, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the vendors and I'm going to talk to the sponsors, and then we're going to try and do something. And I just want to give a special shout out again. I said this earlier. I want to say it again. Intellic Integration and HiveMQ, they had the most scans of any two vendors at the show. So that is the scans at their booth. They had the most scans, and it was in the hundreds. It's like, I mean, I don't know if it was Robbie doing the scanning. I don't know who's doing the scanning, but Intellic and HiveMQ had the most scans by far. By the way, the top 17 scans were the greens, and we scored them before I looked at the scans. So we obviously scored them right. All right, with that, thank you, everybody. Like, subscribe.